Hello, greetings, and welcome to the Purple Portal. It is a beautiful day here in South Florida, and the question for you today is, how are you being? Today's the day to give up the question, how are you doing? We seem to ask that so casually of one another. Stop the doing. How are you being? And that's kind of going to be threaded all through the whole month that we're in. And we're in the sign of Scorpio. And that being, if you can really be under the sign of Scorpio, oh my golly, look out. You will be like the phoenix. Maybe you'll be reduced to the ashes, but you will rise up out of your own ashes and be so spectacular, your wings will spread to such an expansive, magical state that you're going to hardly recognize who you are. So I do greet you, and I am your host, the Reluctant Mystic, Elaine Bartlett. And today I've invited many of you on Facebook to call in and join the conversation. And for those of you who did not get that number, it's 321-806-3159. 321-806-3159. And don't be intimidated by this wonderful male voice that answers. Jeff will pipe you right on through to me. And if you're a little reluctant to pick up the phone and you have a personal, private question that you wish to ask, you can contact me at Purple, as in the color, Portal, Portal, and the number's 777. So it's Purple Portal at Purple Portal 777 at gmail.com. And I also invite you to go to my website, higherconsciousness.com. There you can poke around and see what I'm up to. And that's HIERCONSCIOUSNESS. So we're going to talk about a couple of things today, a couple of special things. The big part of today's topic is going to be about Lakshmi. But before we get to Lakshmi, I just want to give you a sort of a personal announcement here, a heads up. On November 4th, I have been invited to be the guest speaker at Florida Institute of Technology, giving a presentation on mindfulness. Little do they know it, but the mindfulness talk is actually going to steer itself more into non-duality, being in a state of oneness and remaining in a state of presence awareness. So I'm going to kind of take mindfulness to a new height, which is perfect under the sign of Scorpio, because the old must die. Of course, isn't it interesting? We're having elections under the sign of Scorpio, where the old must die. So if you want any further information on November 4th, it is in the evening from 6:30 to 8. It's in the library lobby at Evans Library on the campus of FIT. And if you want anything further on that, then you're going to have to contact me via Purple Portal 777 at gmail.com, and I'll give you any further information that you wish. But it is open to the public, so I do encourage you to come on in and meet and greet. So that's a fun thing. I'll give a shout out. I've given a shout out before to my loyal listener down in Boca Raton, Laurel, who is mending her body and putting herself all back together after a year of many health issues. So a big shout out and a heart full of love to you, Laurel. And Laurel had asked me an interesting question between this week and last week. And the question actually was surrounding my discussion of the feng shui of your office last week. Laurel has studied with me. She reminds me, she heard me say this 30 years ago. You gotta love somebody who remembers what you said 30 years ago and has kept in touch to remind you that you said that. So the conflict is about your chair and the position of your desk. It's not actually a conflict. It's simply different approaches of thought. And I have studied book after book with Chinese master upon Chinese master, masters from other cultures outside of China. And there seems to be a discrepancy of thinking, and I actually understand it. Some of the teachers and the books insist that you have your back to the window and you're looking into the room. Well, that's all well and good if you have kind of a blind or a drape or curtain behind you to block some of that chi from dissipating actually out of your spinal energy. The other concept is, no, you want to be looking out the window. I've given it a lot of contemplation. I give things like that probably undue contemplation until it shakes down inside of me and I actually get a sense of what is going to be the healthiest thing for the bulk of you and me. The biggest thing is if you are in a position, either you own the company or you're a key player in the company or even a lowly secretary, you need to be able to see the doorway. It's actually more the doorway that's the issue versus the window placement. It's the doorway where the expression is, oh, there is where the enemy comes in. So you want to see the enemy. If you are in a position where you have your back to the doorway, that's not going to kill you and the enemy is not going to jump at you. But there's a very easy cure. Simply, sometimes it's your computer screen that does this. You need a little reflector. So your computer screen could be the reflector, so you see what's coming up behind you. Or you have a little mirror on the wall, and it could be just a tiny little thing that just gives your spirit a sense of peace of mind. You know, if you were a mafia member, now I'm not a mafia member, but the very few movies I've seen connected with the mafia, they would never sit with their back to the door. They want to be able to be in what's called the command position to see what's coming at them. And your spirit actually appreciates that as well. So do your best with where you have this chair in position to the window. Personally, I am rather mercurial. Therefore, I change my furniture fairly frequently, maybe every 3 months or so. I simply get bored with it and tired of the energy as it is. So I shake things up a little. And I could turn the room completely on its ear, and it seems to make me very happy. Some people get absolutely intimidated by the idea of even changing the desk from the left side of the room to the right side of the room. That temperament is actually what we call more of a wood nature. Those people tend to be a bit stubborn, obstinate, fixed, and they certainly have an allergic reaction to the word called change. So do your best with it. Your spirit knows where it wants to be, and if it doesn't feel right, and if you're not successful, try changing. Just change the chair, flip it to the other side, turn the desk around. It's not the end of the world to simply turn your desk around. So that's one thing, and I hope, Laurel, that gave you a little more clarity. And P.S., I do hope your recovery is going at its own gentle, proper pace, as every recovery needs to. So I will not say to you, hurry and get well, because I don't believe in that. There's no hurrying in the universal force. Everything is in proper timing. And the next question that I've had between last week and this one is a friend has a fellow, her honey, has a man cave. And the man cave is in the northwest direction of their home. And the northwest direction is something called Chien, which means heavy. It's all about big metal. It's called big metal, meaning things like steel and silver, and it's just simply called big metal. It relates to your lungs and your intestinal tract and your brain. It also is the power point for a male, generally, because it has to do with head of the company, the father, the parent, the chief cook and bottle washer, if you will. It is predominantly what we call a yang energy, meaning it's all male. However, in this day and age, particularly in the United States, many women have had to fulfill the shoes of the male energy and step up and become the main breadwinner. So then the Northwest becomes very, very critical for them. The colors pertaining to the Northwest are all of the silver tones, whites, any of the whites and light creams, grays, dove gray, anything in that spectrum, because that supports this strong energy, which is also, it's got another name called help from heaven. So it's actually a good place if you have a little talisman that represents help from heaven, an angel, a goddess, a god, a Buddha, the Christ energy, whatever you like. But it's a very good area to put talismans like that. But at any rate, this dear gentleman has been happy in his man cave for the last 10 years, and it's kind of painted a pea green. Now, their fortunes for the last 10 years have not been very strong. And just this day, she finally thought to ask me, what about the color? I'm thinking of changing it to dove gray and white. And I'm like, you go, girl. Because what's happening energetically, because the Northwest is metal, and the green in there is actually what we would refer to in feng shui as wood. Metal chops wood. So their infrastructure subtly, very subtly, was being undermined. So yes, indeed, sometimes pay attention. Go check out your Northwest. It's a very, very important piece of your home. Now, that being said, every pocket of your home is important, because what good is it for me to say, oh, be careful of your lungs, they're very, very important, and dismiss your liver and your heart, and all the other things. Everything has a meaning, and everything is there to support you. Okay, so there we have the couple of questions. Oh, there was another question, a thought about moving and how to protect the house. And this was a case where it's a 2-story home, and the first story, the bottom level, is where the tenants are, and the second story is where the owners are. The first floor people, the tenants, are not behaving particularly well, and that's putting it very nicely. The owners really want them to leave, but the owners are hesitant to tell them to leave. So the owner is choosing to suffer rather than address the problem. So my first suggestion was, we're not to suffer for someone else. It really is very, very negative. You can do all your suffering on your own. Don't pick up someone else's suffering, and don't write a story about their suffering. Just let it be. So what we determined to do in this was actually use the energy of the violet light or the violet flame. It's called the violet light, the violet flame, the violet shield. And we actually set up, I took the house apart energetically, and I wrapped the lower floor almost like you would wrap a parcel that you're going to take to the post office, like no strings, nothing on it. Just wrapped this thing enormously in the color violet. Now, at first, the owner really didn't care if I did that or not. She was more interested in, what about me up on the second floor? And I pointed out, well, under the law of one, we want this tenant to go forward and be happy. So energetically, it's a better way to play it, even if they've not been the most gracious guests as tenants. People forget that we're actually all guests on this planet, and I don't care how much you own. So we've got to behave a little bit more graciously one toward another. That'd be a concept. Then what we did on the upper deck was sort of like you would have a gift basket or an Easter basket wrapped again in this violet light with sort of a top notch that you could almost grab the 2 floors and separate them if you wanted to. And the reason I wanted a top notch on the top floor was it actually looked a bit flame-like. So it was just for an inner visual to help her get a sense of protection, a sense of everything is in the right place at the right time. And it reminded me, interestingly, of a little scenario. A number of years ago, I was studying a topic called pranic healing. And it was all about just this kind of thing where you would protect your belongings and learn hidden protection secrets, which really worked very well. And at the end of the conference, I was checking out, and a young gal and her husband rushed back in, and she's ashen. She's looking awful. They had checked out and had gone on to the next adventure when she realized she had left her wedding ring and engagement ring in the top drawer in the hotel. And she knew by now there would certainly, she didn't know what was going to happen. So she ran back to the room. They got the keys, got her in there. There was both of the rings tucked exactly where she left them in the corner of the drawer. The room had already been completely cleaned. And when she came down, she simply explained what she had done when she went into the hotel in the first place and took the rings off. She put them in the drawer, surrounded them in this violet light, put out the thought that they are invisible, and therefore they were completely protected. It was absolutely fantastic. So that's the sort of updated news. Feng Shui-wise, we do have a new moon coming this weekend. The new moon is going to be in Scorpio, so we kind of have a double Scorpio hit of it's your chance to die right, kind of like straighten up and die right. And this is a birthing. This is the Phoenix energy. You can't be reborn unless you die. So would you please have a lovely time in your own dying process, and don't get your knees in a knot about it. Just enjoy it. Let the journey be. Okay, so since we have a new moon in Scorpio this weekend, we also have the entrance of the great energy of Lakshmi. Now, many of you who are listening to this know that energy, and you know there's a whole lot to be done. Those of you who don't know what that energy is, I'm going to take you through it sort of in a crash course. You may want to get a pencil and take some notes. I will be giving a little chant or invocation, and if you can't catch it because I say it too quickly, then please email me, and I'll be happy to send you the invocation either via snail mail or email. So if you have to email, it's purpleportal777@gmail.com. You may want some of this information because it is delightfully delicious. So who the heck is Lakshmi, and how do you even spell her name? So her name is L-A-K, S as in Sam, H, M as in Mary, I. And Lakshmi is the goddess energy of all wealths, all fertilities. Yes, people in India, this is a Hindu goddess, and people in India use the energy or invoke the energy of the goddess for actually getting pregnant. And those of us who that is not on our agenda at this time, whether you be male or female, it's the energy of getting pregnant with new ideas and any new wealth that you can conjure up. So this year, here's the drum roll, Lakshmi's appearance is felt Saturday night, October 29th. And I'm going to talk more about that. But first, I want you to understand that to really experience this great presence, you have to invoke it. You got to ask. You got to call upon it. If you don't call upon it, well, it falls under my admonition of no asky, no getty. So you're not going to hear anything or experience anything unless you actually ask. So the idea of invoking means start with a little ritual, a humble little ritual. For example, light a candle. The candle, it's actually the fire element, and a candle clears the air of any kind of negativity or angst or even illness. that's hanging in the air. You know, when I come into this little studio, I always bring my little candle because I want to clear the air of anybody who was in here before me that may have had a bad air day. I do hope you caught the pun of that. For such an important ceremony, if you can't afford to actually purchase a new candle, which I do kind of suggest new is good, then if funds are low, just think a flame. Or, push comes to shove, find an old candle and use that. But fire is what you need. Fire is a source of pulling energy toward you. Any color candle is fine with me, although it seems that the Lakshmi Energy really enjoys red or gold. So when you actually light the candle and devote the simple action to this presence, you're doing it in her honor. And take a minute to think about what good fortune means to you, because at this point you are actually invoking the goddess of all good fortune. So does your concept of good fortune require any thinking? You know, if any of you are into journaling and you look back to 2009 and you see what you journaled, you kind of get a little sick to your stomach because all the things that were so important and meaning good fortune to you, generally that's changed. So reflect again, what is your good fortune? What's your idea of it? And get real clear about that. Okay, so here's the invocation for Lakshmi. Goddess Lakshmi, Mother of Divinity, shine your radiant smile upon me. Shower my life with golden wealths in every manner. Thank you, O lotus-born Lakshmi. And then chant Om Shri Mahalakshmi Eswaha. Om Shri Mahalakshmi Eswaha. Om Shri Mahalakshmi Eswaha. It's almost like certainly you're intoning it, but these tones and the fire draw things to you. Because we've moved so far away from the interaction with nature and Mother Earth, many people have lost that simplistic understanding of drawing something correctly to us or repelling it. We've become all tangled up in our thinking, in really crummy programming. So there's a lot to understanding just the simple power of draw it to you. There's another final way to kind of clear the air, and I'm just going to, this will maybe hurt some of your ears. Other ears will feel very good by it. Those are Tibetan singing bells. They're called tingsha bells. It's a wonderful tool to clear as well as to draw. It's kind of like a double dip tool. So who is this Lakshmi actually? And how did I find out about her? That's it's an interesting part of the journey. In 2000, when I received the inner guidance to open a retail shop, which was news to me because I didn't think that was on my agenda, but it's how the presence of me wanted to express itself. So I opened a retail shop with not much money at all, if indeed none. And one day, which meant the bottom line there is no money to advertise. And it's challenging to have a retail shop when you can't advertise and no one knows you're the new kid on the block and in the town. And I was sitting there trying to just fluff up the place and keep everything sparkling and twinkling and sending out violet spirals into the community, which actually is the reason why the shop took off enormously. But this one lovely early autumn day, the door flew open and technically it looked like she flew in, a woman I'd never seen before or since. And she simply stated, "Oh, I'm at like an ashram up in New York State, and I'm down here for the day, and I don't know how I got in here, but oh, I'm here just for the day because I got to get back. Lakshmi's coming. And I'm like, who's Lakshmi? I grew up in the traditional, very Christian family. So Hinduism was not exactly on my plate at that time. And I could barely even pronounce her name. It took me several tries. And then she just went on this magnificent, very brief spiel of Lakshmi is the goddess of all wealths, and she's a Hindu goddess. And in South India, they honor her at the full moon. And at the northern India, we honor her at the new moon, which is why, and she said that's what most Americans do. We honor her at the new moon, which is this Saturday. So Lakshmi is actually the female aspect of the god Vishnu. And some of you who have just a smattering or a lot of Hinduism understand that name. And she's called the lotus born. And she's her name, Shri, that Lakshmi part, is actually known to be the female energy of the Supreme Being. So it's not counterintuitive or against anything you've ever known or studied. Matter of fact, every religion has their different deities. My sense now, because I've studied most of the major philosophies, is I want to take the best of all of them. I don't want to leave anybody out. I want to be every bit of what they all are, as they are holding the frequency underneath all of the drivel now that goes on in most religions and philosophies. But underneath all that, there is the underlying tone of the frequency of oneness and the one supreme energy, and allowing that to be radiating through each person. It's so simple that the most of the religions have now completely lost it, glossed over it, and twisted it. So I have a tremendous appreciation for this energy. And she appears not only as the goddess of good fortune, but of righteousness, fulfilling desires, certainly physical wealth, but all wealths. And one of the little things she's really good at is helping you with the complete liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth. Now, for some of you, that's very daunting because you feel you lose your identity. Well, that's going to be a topic for another day because you actually don't. Lakshmi has 4 arms, or so it would appear, and cascades of gold coins are seen pouring from her hands, which is simply giving the ever outpouring message of infinite supply. And the infinite supply, because we're all one, is within you. And she's just there reminding you of that. There's often 2 elephants shown standing next to her and spraying water. And this is representing the idea of the purity within, and just the effortless, it should be effortless, method of gaining both material and spiritual prosperity. So both physical, material, and spiritual prosperity are sprayed upon you constantly if you can go there. If you can't go there, it's not for you. Sorry. Okay, if you want to call in and ask anything, think about it. Okay, the Lakshmi energy is held in a festival cycle, and it's called the Festival of Lights. And this is where we begin to have a whole sensation of the use of lighting and fire. So it starts with you actually putting lights. Now, in India, here's what they actually do. They'll put lights around their house. Now, when I was teaching this up in the Northeast, we all got so into this, I can't even tell you. People's homes looked like they were lit up like it was Christmas time. So it begins with get some lights going. And then, as the day approaches, Now, this would be, because it's this Saturday, you've got a window of time here. And what you have to be doing is clean. You have to clean everything. And I've spoken about clean before on the air. But Lakshmi is like a real bug for clean. She really wants everything clean. She wants your clothing clean. She wants your space decluttered. Because where it's dirty and nasty and cluttered, she simply can't go. Her frequency is not a match for it. So when you're clearing the space, again, use the tincture bells. Bring in firelight. And here is a chant that every room, when you go into every room, and I mean from the laundry room to the basement, to the attic, to the whatever rooms you've got there that are not your main rooms, but main rooms included, here's the chant, and you want to say this chant 9 times in every room. Om Mani Padme Hum. That's the great Om Mani chant. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. 9 times every room. Get your affairs in order. Straighten out your bank books, your checking accounts. In Hindu, this is actually the New Year. I celebrate everyone's New Year. I love everyone's New Year because it's an opportunity for a new beginning. My favorite New Year actually is the Chinese New Year, simply because my energy resonates very strongly to it. My least favorite New Year is the Western civilization January 1st New Year. There's little or no chi around that New Year. So here we've got a new year coming in. Get your ledgers in order. Get your spreadsheets in order. Get everything on your computer weeded out. Get rid of your old Facebook stuff that no longer is applicable. Get rid of your stuff that if someone looked at it today, you'd cringe. So get what? Get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, get it, gone. Get it? Okay. So you want to make sure the entrance to your home or your business, because connected with business, this is when they actually start their business year again over there. And under the law of one, if it's starting again there, it's starting here. So make that entranceway clean, get the fingerprints off, attractive, certainly on the East Coast of the United States, mums, chrysanthemums, they're all radiantly beautiful right now in gold and the burnt oranges. That's worth you putting out this year to draw in this fabulous energy. The other thing is you want to have ready, a whole supply of sweets. Lakshmi enjoys sweets, or just the sensation of it. You also have to take time to make a wish list. Or maybe the wishes, and I'm not even sure I'm into wishes anymore. Make your concrete, this is what I want list this year. And really devote some quality time. If you want your bank account to be fuller, write that down. What do you want? For those of you who have worked with the Lakshmi energy in the past, make sure you give thanks at this point for all she's already brought to your family and to yourselves. So here's an example of some wantings that would be very healthy for you. Debts paid in full. Awakening the vibration of true wealth within yourself. The wealth of health. The wealth of friendships. The wealth of harmony. The wealth of happiness. The wealth of gifts. I love the wealth of gifts. For years and years and years, I have had this consciousness of gifts. And it's really delightfully humorous. People seem to just give me gifts. So change your consciousness. If you get no gifts and you want some, ask for a wealth of gifts. A wealth of new horizons. A wealth of divine opportunities. A wealth of energy and vitality. A wealth of healthy nutrition. That would mean you've got to now start reading the labels, put down the GMO nonsense, get some organic food. You see where that's going. A wealth of balanced rest and quiet time. That's something that Americans seem to shy away from, and they seem to have great pride in. I only had 6 hours sleep last night. It's throwing your system totally out of whack. How about a wealth of growing relationships to deeper levels? Wealth of family unity. That's among the missing these days. How about a wealth of new business ventures? How about a wealth of healthy, honorable children and grandchildren? How about a wealth of healed relationships? You know, those relationships that are sort of hanging out there, that they've never quite been addressed properly because you don't know how to say, I'm sorry? How about a wealth of self-worth and self-esteem? Wealth of learning and education? Wealth of exercise? Wealth of fun? Want me to spell that word? It's F-U-N, kind of right up there with J-O-Y. A wealth of adventure and travel, if that's what you're wanting. A wealth of opportunities to love. Wealth of opportunities to serve. So all of this is embodied in this fabulous Lakshmi energy. So now we get to, okay, it's Saturday, October 29th, and what do? Well, you actually light your lights. You, for the most part, I'm going to suggest you light them most of the day. Just keep them on. However, Lakshmi actually, the entrance point of her frequency is at 6 p.m. Saturday evening. So, to get ready for the entrance date, I encourage you, after you've turned the lights on, go take a bath or shower, put on clean clothing, preferably something red or gold or both. Set up a little altar in a central or obvious space to welcome her. And this could be your kitchen counter for all I care. It doesn't have to be like you know, go down to the Home Depot and get some wood and start making an altar. Keep it simple. It could be your coffee table in the living room. But it should be in an obvious place. And on this little sacred space, put a flower, a candle, a piece of fruit. Here's where you were buying something sweet. Put something sweet. And your written or typed wish list. It's also nice to make an offering from something very much from the earth, like a pretty pebble, a seashell from the ocean, a twig from a tree, a button, a small crystal, but something very dear to you or that you took some thought to get. And if you're so inclined, put a picture of Lakshmi in her honor at this table. I also put on my altar pictures, actual pictures of family members that I am asking for deeper protection for, a closer bond with, just a deeper sense of remembrance. So with all of these things said and done, I have to tell you, I have had some folks go the distance. When she's kind of a foodie and she likes sweets, I have had a couple of gals in some of my seminars come back the following week and tell me this. They made a 8-course dinner for her, several kinds of wine. They had treats and special things. Others have had wine and cheese gatherings for her. Personally, the first time I did this, I was under a lot of pressure. The store was new. The information was coming at me very quickly. I had moved into a new home. It was a 4-story new home. Moved in there all by myself, which I was happy to do, and I loved that house. But oh my golly, it needed a lot of stuff. And there was no way that in the short window of time I could have this space ready for her and cleaned. So I did my best. I cleaned one room and made it twinkly and kind of went on from there thinking, oh boy, I'm going to be brave because here's what happens next. At 6 o'clock, and I know you're going to think this is insane, but this is very similar to putting out cookies and milk for Santa or carrots for the Easter Bunny. It's along that line. It's moving into a childlike innocence and see where returning to that point of innocence brings you. What can you get from that? And what can that give you? So at 6 o'clock with the lights on, this place is spick and span as you can get it, candles burning, food out, you actually go to your front door, which we now know is free of fingerprints and it's impeccable, and you open the door and energetically you invite this presence in. Now, some of you who have worked energetically, either inviting angels in or different entities in, you know that this is absolutely as real as it's going to get. The rest of you, you probably nodded off, but that's your problem. So when you open the door and you greet her and you invite her in, you certainly take her to the altar and tell her, you know, you are a guest in my house and welcome. And remember this, there's a wonderful expression, a guest in the house is God in the house. And this is the aspect of God. And you can show her around, depending on how brave you are. Now, that first day, that first time I experienced this, I was very brave. I took her everywhere. I took her where there were boxes piled, where there was old ratty carpet still on the floor, where there was no hope of me even having an opportunity to get in and clean it. And as I began to move around, I could feel whatever presence I was feeling more and more deeply. And that particular time, I just began sobbing with, I'm so sorry, it's not as clean as it should be. And I sobbed then the rest of the time she was there because I could feel the presence. And it was like a release of my pent-up energy and my pent-up fears about this enormous new project and assignment that I had been placed on. So brought her back to the altar. After you bring her around, bring her back to the altar, sit down with her, share your list with her, go over it very carefully, and trust that you're taking this pressure off your own shoulders. You know, sometimes we carry too much stuff. We carry other people's sorrow. We carry their problems. We carry our own worst imaginations. So put the stuff down, hand it over to her, and let it be. And tell her of your disappointments and heartaches. And then you're done with it. You don't have to keep carrying it. Tell her about your hopes and your dreams and your aspirations. And then take out any photos that you're guided to show her, because this is your time to share and express in whatever way is comfortable and meaningful. If you've put some treats out, have some of them. I'd love to tell you all of a sudden your treats are going to magically disappear. That's not going to happen, so don't be looking for it. But you will feel a presence if you're open to it, and that is a treat. And if you've put out some wine, have a glass. What I had put out that first day, because I couldn't even find the wine, is how much I had not unpacked. But I was absolutely very aware of where a lovely bottle of Crown Royal was located. And I thought, well, how appropriate is that whiskey for this evening? Doesn't get much better than Crown Royal, because I was entertaining royalty. After a few minutes, you're going to get the sensation that it's complete. And I just tell you, sit there for a moment or two, absorb all that's happened, thank this presence for manifesting, and then you'll know it's time to go back to the front door and escort this presence out. And the closure does vary from person to person. I've had people stay with her for an hour. I've had people stay with the presence for 5 minutes. Doesn't matter. Whatever makes you happy. Listen to your heart And you will know when your time together has reached conclusion. You're going to feel it. And so once you've ushered her out, the deed is done. And now your part is to enjoy the feast that you've created, no matter how humble, and thank her for the new beginnings. Thank her for coming. Thank her in advance for granting all of your deepest, heartfelt desires. And trust that things are being handled for your highest good. So you can almost get a sense of things dropping off your shoulders, if nothing else. Bid this goddess a safe journey and bless her on her way. And it marks the end of the Lakshmi ritual for this year, but the beginning of a hopeful, bright, very profound, very successful new year. The Lakshmi energy, it is an energy, and you are an aspect of this great energy made manifest. You're it. It's you. And you've got to get to the point where you understand that all wealths live within you eternally. And that Lakshmi, actually, the paradox here is Lakshmi never came or went. She just is. She is that. She is the isness in you. And as she is just that, so are you. So it's a very loving, tender process if you care to do it. I just always look forward a week or so later to hear, how'd you do? Did Lakshmi come? And one of those events, a couple of weeks after, a young mother came in. Oh, she was just fantastic. This gal had a 4-year-old little guy, Quentin. And Quentin was very skeptical of Mommy's plan to bring in somebody. And as a matter of fact, when he went to the front door with Mommy, and Mommy had really primed this little guy for this. You know, we have to put out the candy, and we have to put out a little ginger ale, and we got to do it all, right? Well, the little guy wasn't having too much of it, and he was completely disappointed when they opened the door and there's no Lakshmi in physical presence. Well, Mommy set the child down in the living room at the coffee table, and Mommy went about her work, showing Lakshmi all the rooms on the upper level. And this was a home that had a galley that you could walk and see most of downstairs. And all of a sudden, she's hearing this little guy talk downstairs, and she calls down, "Who are you talking to, Quentin?" And Quentin doesn't miss a beat. "Mommy, I'm talking to Lakshmi." Lakshmi actually did manifest because he was so filled with innocence. So it's your innocence that draws every good thing. Drop your sophistication. Drop your worldly ways. They're really not making it, and they're not bringing you the joy that's right here for each of us. So anything that's become too technical, too difficult, too mind-bending, let it go. Let it go and swing into this Lakshmi energy. Why not? What have you got to lose? Maybe money out for a new candle. Maybe a bottle of wine if you feel like going that way. Maybe a flower. Go pick one from the garden. Go back to your innocence. Go back to your state of wonderment. It's so magical. You are a magical being. I see it for you. I'm aware of it. And when you start seeing it, then there's two of us. Then there's more of us. Then somehow the community is righted. And somehow the town is better. And somehow the state is better. And somehow, naturally, easily, effortlessly, you and I are part of peace on earth. Much love. Happy Lakshmi time, Saturday, October 29, 6 o'clock. See ya, hear you next week. Bye.